Thousands of companies start up every day in the United States alone. Does it make sense for a bootstrapped company or a funded startup to spend capital on a killer domain name and brand? That's the question we're going to answer on today's show. Stay tuned. 3 messages before today's show. First, if you're a domain name investor, don't you have unique legal needs that require domain name technical know-how and industry experience? That's why you need David Westlow of Wiley Ryan. Go search for David Westlow on Domain Sherpa, watch his interviews, and you can see for yourself that he is intelligent and articulate, can help you with buy-sell agreements, deal with website content issues and UDRP actions, and can even help you write your website terms and conditions. David Westlow is the lawyer to call for all your internet and intellectual property needs. See for yourself at newmediaip.com. Second, when you have questions about domain names, where should you go to ask them? The answer is dnforum.com. Not only is DN Forum the largest domain name forum in the world, but it's the best. You can learn about domain names in the industry, buy and sell domain names, talk about domain name news, and meet other domainers just like yourself. Register for a free DN Forum account and begin advancing your skills and knowledge today. And when you do sign up, send me a friend request so we can connect. My ID is Domain Sherpa. Finally, whenever I'm thinking of buying or selling a domain name, the very first place I go is estabat.com. Their service provides quick and comprehensive information about the valuation and the critical factors that you need to know about, like other extensions that are reserved, recent sales, search volume, and cost per click rates on search engines. And if you haven't tried their lead generator service for domains you want to sell, you're missing one of the most powerful tools around. Those are the reasons I pay for the service every month. Here's your program. Hey everyone, my name is Michael Seiger and I'm the publisher of DomainSherpa.com, the website where you come to learn how to become a successful domain name investor and entrepreneur directly from the experts. About 3 in every 1,000 adults in the United States launches a business each month. Worldwide, there are about 300 million people trying to start about 150 million businesses. If each of those companies needs a web presence, they all need domain names. And with some of these startups being funded to grow as quickly as possible, many of those are interested in purchasing killer domain names so they can create a memorable brand. Is spending tens of thousands of dollars a smart investment for startups? That's the question we're going to answer on today's show. To help us answer this question, we've brought back a past Domain Sherpa, Andrew Rosener, the CEO of Media Options, a premium domain name brokerage and online media consulting firm. Drew, welcome back to the show.
Great to be here, Michael. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. And first off, you and your wife, Anna, are new parents from what I hear. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, we just gave birth to our first daughter, Mila Sofia. I'm very, very, very happy.
Beautiful name. And so what are the stats of Mila? She was born
7 pounds, 12 ounces, 22 inches. Big baby.
Hair like Dad?
Well, she's got more hair than Dad, actually.
Nice. All right. And you look better than I do. You know, I remember when we had our first or second or third kid, I wasn't getting any sleep. What's going on? How do you look so good?
I mean, I think we've gotten really lucky so far, knock on wood. It's she's been sleeping well. She's, sleeps through the night except for feedings. And, I don't know. We're a good team. It's worked out well so far.
Well, congratulations, and look forward to meeting her someday at a conference.
Absolutely.
So let's start with this, Drew. What's a killer domain name for startups? What does it mean to buy a killer domain name?
So in the startup realm, I mean, a killer domain name, it's all about a brand, building a brand, something that is memorable, easy to spell. So much about startups today is viral, right? Word of mouth.
Mm-hmm.
And in order to get that type of word of mouth marketing and promotion, you need something that people can remember so they can tell their friends and family about it. So, it goes back to something that's short, something that passes the radio test. The radio test being, if you hear it on the radio, do you know how to spell it? And are you going to remember it when you get home and out of your car? I think those are the primary factors that make up a good brand and subsequently a good domain name.
Yep. So not all businesses are going to be the next Google or Amazon. How important are domain names to startups anyways?
So I think it also depends on the area of business that you're entering. If people are going to be primarily finding you through search, then perhaps an exact match keyword domain name is going to be more effective for your brand or for your domain name at least. Even if your brand name might be different than your domain name, if the majority of your customers, potential customers, are going to find you through search, then an exact match keyword domain name may be the best option. However, if you are going to be relying on, like I said, word of mouth marketing and some viral marketing and social media in order to get new clients and more traffic to your website, then I think a really strong brand is going to be the best option.
And probably how big of an audience you're serving comes into play as well, right? Like Google
Absolutely.
serves the entire world, so if they had UnitedStatesSearch.com, they'd be limiting their growth right from the beginning.
Absolutely. I've always, a few years back, sort of geo-focused professional domains were really sort of the rage, and Google, due to basically their local search and their entrance into the sort of directory market, has kind of killed off that market for those types of domain names. But I've always felt, even before that those types of domains really do limit your audience, and you never know. You always have to plan for the future. You never know what areas you're going to grow into, or if you're going to expand outside of your local focus. And so I think having something that's generic and more broad is better planning.
Yeah. So a name like a Google, a brandable name like a Google.com, which was just a made-up word based off of some other word, or Yahoo, which used to be the killer site to go to, is great because it doesn't say the exact word in the domain name. It could be search today. It could be a marketplace tomorrow.
Yeah. You also want to take into account, foreign languages. So you got to be careful that maybe the name that you pick doesn't have a negative connotation in another language, or even has a direct translation to something that you may not like or your customers may not like in a foreign language.
Right.
I've seen that in multiple cases where, a client had a great name, or so they thought, then they try to enter, France, and, their name is no longer, that positive.
Do you have an example of that you can share?
There was one. I'm trying to remember. This was years ago.
Yeah.
And it was specifically France. I don't remember.
So it was an English word, but in French it meant something else.
No, it was actually a that's why I can't remember. It was like an iteration of an English word, not the exact spelling of an English word, but it was some made up word that was something to do with an English dictionary word, but actually had a translation in French.
So what do you do in that case? If there's 20 main languages, do you have to, and you think you want to pick a certain domain name, like some brandable domain name? Do you have to go find somebody in each of those languages to try and determine what the word is, and if there's any slang for it in that country?
I think, again, it comes down to how big of an audience do you expect? I mean, at the end of your growth cycle, how big are you going to be? If you're, if you're going to have some secondary markets, you're going to be dabbling in those markets, then, you don't need to spend the tens of thousands of dollars that it'll cost in legal fees and agency fees in order to do that type of research. But we have a client right now looking to launch a global brand in the education space, and we're doing a search. It's a startup out of Palo Alto, and we're doing a search for them for a name, and it's been going on for several weeks now. And they do have to take those things into account. And 3 times now we found a killer name, and they sent it to the lawyers and to the agency to do the testing on the individual markets that they were going to be targeting. And all 3 times so far, it's come back and gotten nixed. And it was names that we were like, oh man, lights out. The price was right. It passed all the initial tests, but when it went to the lawyers and the agency to do the testing for specific markets and for copyright and trademark rather, it failed the test.
Yeah.
So it definitely is. It's definitely something you need to take into consideration if you really do plan on being global and being huge. If you're going to go big, you need to take these things into consideration.
Okay. There's I love it when fate steps in. I was flipping through my Twitter feed, having lunch just before we got on this show, Drew, and there's an article just out today at venturebeat.com entitled "Startup Names Don't Have to Be Terrible. Here's the Proof," and it was written by Rob Meyerson. I think it was a guest blog. And some of the examples of bad names that he gave were Coop, spelled QOOP.com. Now, most people would think that a 4-letter domain name is great because it's so short, it's easier to remember. It meets a couple of the criteria that you had mentioned right at the top of the show. But also, the other criteria you mentioned was the radio test. Do you spell it Coop, K-O-O-P, or K-W-O-O-P, or co-op?
C-O-O-P, or C-O-U-P,
yeah, exactly.
Or, it's,
So I found it interesting, and I just brought it up on my phone here, a couple of the domain names that they mentioned that were good, I wanted to get your take on. One of them was called Curious, and I assume it's at curious.com. A Menlo Park startup that raised $7.5 million Series A financing serves hundreds of short video-based lessons for people who want to learn a new skill or rekindle a favorite hobby. So if you're curious about something.
Concept.
So
great concept, great name.
Thumbs up from you?
Thumbs up. Absolutely slam dunk name, I think, for that concept.
So we're gonna talk a little bit about pricing and how people can get a ballpark figure. And so I'll come back to curious.com and get your thoughts on that. Another one that they mentioned based out of Palo Alto as well was called datahero.com. They, quote unquote, analyze patterns in data to help you unmask the answers within.
So, I mean, datahero.com, it's not a bad name.
Mm-hmm.
It's easily replaced by, Data Wizard or Data Magic or Data, Data World, Data Universe,
you name
endless.
It. There's a million adjectives to tack onto data.
Exactly. So I wouldn't consider that to be a premium domain name. It's a nice brandable that, probably they didn't want to spend the money for something better and they picked up for $1,000.
Right.
Or $5,000.
Yeah.
I mean, it passes the radio test. Data, it's 2 generic keywords put together. And
yeah. Okay, here's the final third one, retrace.com. Also based in Palo Alto, just launched at Disrupt New York. Unlike Curious, the word retraced isn't used very often, makes it easier to lay claim to. One of the few places it does show up in everyday speeches in the phrase retrace your steps. And the CEO describes it as the best way to remember and organize everything about the meetings you have.
Also, I think a good application of a unique name. If somebody came to me with retrace.com, I would say, okay, good name, 1-word generic, relatively easy to spell, relatively short. But I wouldn't know immediately what to use it for. What's the application? But I think that's a great application. I think
so Curious.com is the same way. You wouldn't know necessarily what to build on top of that, but when you...
Well, I think Curious has more potential applications, right? Mm-hmm. I could, run off a list of ways to use Curious.com. Retrace, I wouldn't be so sure. Maybe a private investigator or, I who knows?
Right.
But it's, I think they did a great job in the naming there.
Okay, so some interesting domain names there that Rob Meyerson was saying were good examples. Is it better to have a brandable dictionary word or a descriptive dictionary word for your business? Do you want to go for alerts.com if you're running an online alert system, or alertme.com or alertify.com or alert.ly.
Yeah, I think if done well, I think both are good. You know, good brands, right? I think alerts.com is the lights out category killer, right? Generally speaking, I prefer singulars as a brand than I do the plural, unless you're talking about direct retail. So like in the case of sneakers.com, I like sneakers.com better than I like sneaker.com if I'm going to be selling sneakers online. In the case of alerts, you know, if I'm sending out, you know, you're not selling alerts. You don't put an alert in your shopping cart and it's getting sent home to you. So in that case, I would probably prefer alert.com. I think that that's a monster brand as opposed to alerts.com. But at the same time, I think like alertme.com or alert.me are great brands, you know, definitely stick out in your mind. Of course, when you get into alternative extensions like .me, .co, .tv, you know, there's always the adoption factor. Not everybody, you know, you and I can sit here and, you know, of course we know .me, .tv, .co, you know, but I don't know the exact statistic, but I would imagine it's probably not more than 10 or 20% maximum of the general public. You know, and if we look global, it's probably 2% of the general public that actually is aware of .me, .tv, .co, that these are being used, well, first off, that they exist, and secondly, that they're being used as GTLDs as opposed to CCTLDs.
Right, general top-level domains as opposed to country code top-level domains.
Yeah, and actually all three of those, which I would say are, you know, those are probably the three most commonly used alternative extensions for startup brands, .tv, .co, and .me, even more than .net and .org. And all three of those are CCTLDs by nature, but they've been sort of adopted and are now treated as GTLDs. And I think, I could be wrong, but I think that Google also treats them now as GTLDs, so meaning that they're not getting local search preference only in those countries. They're being treated in the same way in search as .com, .net, .org.
Right, and that was a blog post that just recently came out over the past week that a lot of the country code TLDs, traditional country code TLDs, top-level domains, are now being treated as general. So what I'm hearing from you is that you really need to think about your audience for the business. If you're going to go to the general population with, you know, a website that provides a service or product, you probably want to go with something more traditional like .com, because if you're trying to reach cooks in Seattle, seattlecooks.me isn't going to be as good as seattlecooks.com.
No, certainly not. And if you're really targeting a niche market like that, then, you know, I think it's important that you at least get to .com. I mean, you're already limiting your market by having Seattle in front of the keyword, and you know, to then even go one step further and use a .net or .me or .tv, you know, then you're really kind of degrading the quality of the domain you've chosen.
But if you're starting a company that's mainly going to service high-tech companies, you've got a API that plugs into all these sorts of things, you can use whatever you want because high-tech people get that there are multiple top-level domains.
They get it. Although I will say, so you mentioned earlier in the you know, alternative branding, you know, with the spot lead, for instance. I'm not a fan of the ly, and you know, that all came about with Bitly, right? And they was bit.ly. And that came back to slap them in the face, you know, because of the restrictions in Libya and you know, some of the human rights issues. Right. And I think that, you know, that's definitely something to be conscious of, because there's a German company just contacted me, and this is actually a friend of a friend. They contacted me. They had a small startup in Germany, and they've got, you know, had a relative level of success, and they're going for a second round of funding now. Not a big round, but I think it's like $500,000. And they want to upgrade their domain. And he sent me the extensions, and it was all these like .ly or you know, and I just said, you know, listen, guys, you want to step up and you want to get a round of funding. And in order for, you know, an investor to take you serious, you need a good domain name. And, you know, get rid of the ly and give it. It's I don't know. I think that boat has sailed.
Yeah. But don't investors look at it and say, all right, they've got a terrible .io or .ly or whatever extension, but I'm going to fund them. I'm going to give them $30,000 for whatever, Series A or seed, and they'll use 15 of it to go buy a real domain name. Do you think that sometimes they think that? Is it okay for startups to use one of those alternate extensions to start with?
I mean, of course, if you don't have the money, you don't have any option. If you're bootstrapping it and you don't have the cash to buy a premium domain name, then sure, build a viable product or service or website, and when you've got some level of success, use your next level, your next round of funding, and take some of that money and allocate it towards buying the premium domain name. The downside of that is that you're probably going to pay a higher price than you would have originally. If the domain name you're buying now is similar, if you bought the .net before or the .ly or the .me, and now you're very successful, when you go ahead and contact the .com owner, he's going to do a little bit of research and probably find your company and realize that, okay, you guys can now step up and pay a bit more.
Right.
So it's probably going to cost you.
And that was the case with bit.ly when they wanted to buy bit.ly.com. That was the case with Fiverr with 2Rs.com when they wanted to buy Fiverr.com.
Yep, exactly.
The list goes on and on. So it happens, but at least they had the money then, later. So maybe they pay more, but they have the money. Yeah,
absolutely. So, like I said, if you don't have the money, you don't have any choice. So it's fine. You go with what you got, and you upgrade later.
Yeah. Okay. And, I know you're not an attorney, Drew. I'm not an attorney either, but I think it's a fair discussion topic to bring up quickly that, if I start up a company today called bit.ly and it becomes the worldwide sensation around short URL shorteners, but somebody has owned bit.ly.com for years before I started up bit.ly, I have no rights, even though I've created a brand, to grab that domain name, bit.ly.com.
Yeah, yes. Again, I'm not a lawyer, but yes, for the most part, you are right. However, what I've seen from some of the case law and from experience is that if you, let's say you own Bitly, and I'm the guy that's got bit.ly, and I become a global success, and now it's time for me to go buy Bitly. If you have launched a URL shortener on bit.ly.com, after I've become a global success, then you are now infringing on my trademark, assuming that I have one.
Right.
Even if you registered that domain name, prior to my use.
Right.
If you go ahead and directly infringe on my trademark, or display ads of my own ads or my competitors' ads, on your domain name, then you are infringing on my trademark.
Right. And so go consult an attorney, but I see over and over again when large corporations think that they can, and we see it in the domain name blogs all the time, when large corporations who have a brand try and go through the UDRP filings to try and take back a domain name through the ICANN process, and only to find that, they're rejected, and it goes as a mark against their company that, they didn't have the rights to take the domain name.
It's only $2,500 for these companies to launch a UDRP. So it's like, if the company contacts you and you say the price is $100,000 and they think they have, even a 10% chance, it's like, well, file UDRP for $2,500. They've got in-house counsel, and, roll the dice. And it's unfortunate, and there should be penalties against, companies that do that without cause, and companies that are found, in violation of reverse domain name hijacking. But, at this juncture, that's not the case. So
exactly. All right, let's talk about Google and exact match domains. There's been a lot of hype around Google changing their algorithm to give less of a benefit to exact match domains like searchengine.com when people are going to a search engine and typing search engine, you know, like just because it's
Come on, you can think of a better example.
That was a terrible example, wasn't it? Give me a better example.
How about baby strollers?
Baby strollers. You want to find out reviews of baby strollers. You're buying some stuff. Which baby strollers are the best? You type in baby strollers, and then babystrollers.com shows up on top, even though it may not be the best, quote unquote, from your determination, content site for learning about baby strollers. So Google says we're gonna not give as much benefit. Some people called it a penalty. It's whatever it is. What's your take on the exact match domains?
So I think there's that update to Google's algorithm has been grossly overestimated and misunderstood. Essentially, what they've done is, and I don't claim to be the expert on search engine optimization in any way, but I deal a lot with some of the top SEO companies, and you know, it's my understanding that what has been done is that whereas if you owned babystrollers.com and you had a one-page website on there with some brief content before, you could still, you know, not in some of the most competitive verticals, but in let's say second tier, third tier verticals, you could probably rank on page one for that term if you had the exactmatch.com, .net.org domain name. What Google's done now is they've said, okay, look, we're going to evaluate all the exact match keyword domains for the high competition keywords, and we're going to compare them to the other results in that category. And if the content is apples to apples, then the exact match keyword domain name is still going to have some advantage. Maybe not as big of an advantage as it did previously, but there is unquestionably still an advantage given to exact match keyword domain names in the search results in Google. But the content, the user experience needs to be apples to apples in quality with the other websites that are displayed in the ranks.
Right.
It's
so why is that fair for Google to do that? To say, you know, if the sites are the same content, same functionality, same user benefit, why would they give a little benefit to babystrollers.com versus, you know, andrewsbabies.com?
Well, because I think at the end of the day, an exact match domain name shows intent, right? So it tells a user what is this about, right? And if I'm babystrollers.com, I'm probably selling baby strollers. And that might be what you're looking for, most likely, if you're searching for baby strollers.
Right.
So I think it immediately shows intent, which enhances the user experience. It speeds up the user's search and gets them faster to what they're looking for. Microsoft put out a study last year, I believe, that they had conducted showing what happens in search results with exact match keyword domain names and recognized brands. And the click-through rate on exact match keyword domain names and brands that people recognized was significantly higher. I don't have the statistics in front of me, so I'm not going to make something up, but it was significantly higher, and we're talking about click-through rate. So you're displayed with 10 results in the search engines. You know, 9 of them are, you know, Mike's babystrollers.com and, you know, beautiful baby girl strollers.us and
babycapital.com.
And then somewhere in there is babystrollers.com.
Yeah.
Even if babystrollers.com. So the point of the study was actually not just to show intent and reaction to exact match domains, but also to show how much effect an exact match domain would have, even if it wasn't in the top 3 results of Google. So everybody, you know, has always said, you know, you got to be in the top 3 or you don't matter. And actually, they found that if the top 9 were not brands that the user recognized, okay, and were not an exact match domain, that even if the exact match domain or that brand that people recognized was in the 10th position, that still got the most clicks. And I think that, I think that says it all.
Yeah. Okay. And in that case of baby strollers, if you were only doing baby strollers and ancillary accessories, you never plan to be an Amazon.com with every single, product imaginable in the world that has a SKU or even doesn't have a SKU. Like, that might be a good brand for your company. If you
Absolutely.
just want to do drop shipping as a lifestyle business for you and your significant other, like, that could be the perfect brand, which is an exact match domain for your company.
Absolutely. I mean, you and I in my last interview talked about one of our sites, spearfishing.com,
Mm-hmm.
and now we've just launched, actually last week, the e-commerce component of that on spearguns.com. And it's like, okay, well, what do we sell? We sell spear guns. So, you can't have a better domain name to sell spear guns on than spearguns.com.
Yeah.
It just gives a clear intention, and I think that it's correct that Google would give some preference to exact match domain names. Mm-hmm. In the search results, all things being equal, if everything is apples to apples with, the other websites, then sure, the guy with the exact match domain name should have some preference because he's telling the person who's doing the search exactly what he does, exactly what he sells, and that helps that user find what they're looking for.
So now that you got a new baby at home, a week old, Anna's not letting you go spear fishing or buy spear guns anymore, right?
I think it's going to be a little bit. And I got to say, it was one of the things I was thinking about, after she was born is I had to take pause and say, whoa, I've had some close calls while spearfishing, and it's like, I've got somebody else to worry about now. So I got to.
Yeah, you're going to have to spend more time on the discussion forums, less time.
Yeah, I'm not going to give it up, but for sure I'm going to be a lot more cautious.
Yeah. So you live in Panama City. We're doing this call from Seattle and Panama City right now, right?
Yep.
So I've recently seen that Panama.com is up for sale. I think the advertised price was $900,000.
I made a bid to buy that name.
You did.
A few years back, but
So you're an entrepreneur. You know what it takes. You know the value. You're a domain name broker. You understand the value of great domain names. You're an entrepreneur. Yep. You've built multiple websites, some of which you've flipped, and we've talked about those in the past. You're a businessman. Yep. Are you going to go for Panama.com as the killer domain name for your homeland?
I'm not. It's. I think it's just too much money. I think at the end of the day, if we look at all the statistics, the name is probably worth what they're looking for. But unfortunately, Panama is a tough market, and I live here. We own almost every major city and tourist attraction in Panama in the .com extension, and a couple in the .org, but primarily in the .com. And and we've launched websites on several of those, and they've they've been quote unquote successful, right? But small niche markets. It's a hobby project that my wife actually is in charge of, and it's fun because we live here. But it's very difficult to make money online in Panama. The market's just not ready for it. People aren't accustomed to purchasing things online. They're not accustomed to making payments online. The regulatory environment for doing local online business is also a bit more difficult. It's very difficult to get a merchant account in Panama. And and getting advertisers to pay for online advertising is, literally it's like pulling teeth. These guys, they want you to pay them to put their ad on your website. It's really difficult. So I think, $900,000, it's just too much money. You can't, it would take a lifetime to make your money back, I think.
Definitely. So at the end of the day, it's about revenue and expense. And if it takes an entire lifetime to recoup your investment, it's probably not a good investment.
Yeah. Now, at the same time, I will say that I think Panama as a country name is the best brand of any country on earth. Maybe Cuba. Cuba's pretty good too. And Canada's good. But Panama is just has a positive feeling. It's Panama. Everybody loves Panama. There's nothing bad about Panama. So I think, as a brand, it could be good. I think it was Yahoo I think I think Yahoo, this is going back years, but I think their whole advertising business was called Panama. Going back a few years.
Yeah. All right. Let's say we turn back the clock to 1998. It's the year that Google.com launched. Would you have given them, knowing what you know right now, if you went back in time, would you have told them use Search.com rather than Google.com?
Man, I mean, that's a tough question. I mean, Google has just been unbelievably successful. So, I'd be a fool to say, oh, they'd be more successful if they had Search.com, right? So what is it that made them successful? Is it the executive team? Is it the product? Is it the back end of this of the software and the engineering? It's probably cumulative, and I have a hard time believing that they would have been more successful with Search.com than they have been with Google. But I think that it would have been from a defense standpoint and to some degree from offensive standpoint. I think that it would have been a great acquisition for them. Mm-hmm. I think that Search.com, definitely would pave the way for a strong competitor, given that they had a strong executive team, a strong business plan, a strong engineering team, and software, and et cetera, et cetera. So I think it does. Launching a new search engine on Search.com, could definitely take a really minute, tiny little piece out of Google's business. But to go back to 98 and say, oh, Google made a mistake, they would have been more successful if they had Search.com. It's one of the most successful companies, if not the most successful company that has ever graced planet Earth. So I can't say that. But
in Search, and I'll say Search.com might have been better for them in the 98, 99, 2000 time period. But now, as we've seen Google's business mature and where they get their revenue from, still a majority of it coming from the advertisements that are displayed in Search. It would have been more confusing to launch Google Wallet and Google Translation, or Search Wallet and Search Translation and Search, whatever, in all the different niches that they're in.
Absolutely.
So is it fair to say that if a company thinks they're going to go for world domination, they're going to have, social media application that every business in the world can use. They're going to have a calendaring system that every business in the world is going to want to use, a CRM system, you name it. They're going to want, their ideal is to get a single dictionary word that maybe describes them and maybe not, like using the word fire.com or using the word blue.com or orange.com. Allows a company to...
Or white.com.
Yeah, exactly. So is that better? Because... Say it again?
I threw it. We own white.com.
Oh, white.com. Yeah. So is that a better way to go? Because the business can grow into other areas. Like, on one hand, you need to pay more money to brand it. But on the other hand, you can pivot when you need to. So if the business model's not working, you can change it. You can grow into other areas. Mm-hmm. And if the business completely fails, you can resell the domain name.
Exactly. Actually, that's a strong point that I want to make is a lot of companies that approach me to help them acquire a name for their startup, or some companies that are looking for an auxiliary domain name for their company. They don't understand that they look at this as an expense. They say, oh, well, we don't have $100,000 in our budget to spend on the domain name. Well, ultimately you're buying an asset. And, as we've seen over time, as far as I know, domain names have been the fastest appreciating asset class on earth, more than gold, more than real estate, more than oil and minerals. I mean, there is no asset class that I'm aware of that has appreciated more over time than domain names. And, it's not an expense. You are buying, if you buy a strong, particularly a strong one-word dictionary domain name in the .com extension, that domain name has staying power. It's going to appreciate over time. You can, and not only will it appreciate over time, but I think we just posted an article today, maybe on our website. I'm not sure, but I think it's the only asset class that appreciates over time, and you can take a depreciation expense.
Yeah, you just posted that one today. I read it. Right.
Okay.
You can, if you buy it as an asset, you can depreciate it over time like other assets that you're buying for your company.
Exactly.
Right.
So you're taking a depreciation expense. I think even, in the United States, I think it's been, I don't know if this is actually accepted by the IRS or if they've given it their stamp of approval, but there was a domain tax guide put out several years ago that I think a lot of domainers use as guidance, in how they treat their domain names. And in that tax guide, I believe, don't quote me on this, but I believe it states that and it was written by an accountant, and I believe that they stated that you can take rapid depreciation on domain names, which means 5 years. And so you can take a 20%, if you pay $100,000 for your domain name, okay, you've bought an asset that is probably worth at least $100,000 now. And unless you don't hire a good domain broker and you grossly overpay for it. And you can take a $20,000 depreciation expense against that domain name and against your profits every year for the next 5 years. And then at the end of 5 years, you've got an asset that's worth $100,000, and you've written off that $100,000 against profits that you've earned over the last 5 years.
Yeah.
If you've got the cash, there's very few places that you can better invest it, for the growth of your business.
Now, I want to clarify what kind of domain names have appreciated so much, because I own a ton of domain names and none of them have appreciated that much. So just on those 3 examples that we talked about earlier, curious.com, retrace.com, datahero.com, which ones would appreciate, which ones would stay about the same?
Yeah, Data Hero, like I said, that's easily replaced with a million different alternatives.
Yep.
I don't see that name appreciating very much.
Yep.
Although it's in, the data category, and big data is big business, and it's growing. So, that category, that particular vertical, names are drying up. And so I would expect that, domain names in the big data category will continue to appreciate in value just because they're going to become more scarce. But generally speaking, that type of domain name is not going to appreciate because it doesn't have any intrinsic meaning. There's no, it's just a made-up combination of words. That's it. It's easy to trademark, which is great, but it doesn't have any intrinsic value because it's just a random string of words. Whereas curious.com, is a single dictionary word. And, despite what Urban Dictionary says, we're not making any more of those, or not at a very fast pace. So, that is by definition becoming more scarce, and scarcity drives up value. And so I don't see the value of premium.com domain names, oneword.com domain names, two-letter.com domain names for sure, three-letter.com domain names for sure, pronounceable four-letter.coms. Those things are not, those aren't going to go down in value anytime soon unless there's some major technology disruption, which I don't see on the horizon for quite some time. So,
great. I'm glad we clarified which names have value you might want to spend more on, and that they're going to have a value that if all hell goes to, the business goes to hell in a handbasket, you still have something you can sell and return money back to investors. That has value.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely. We're selling joyride.com. On behalf of a client, and he had a startup that they launched on joyride.com. He's got investors, and unfortunately it didn't take off. They had to change of plans, and now they're going to sell the domain name in order to pay back money to the investors. And I don't know how much they invested, but it's my understanding that if we achieve a sale on that domain name at the asking price, a good portion of their investment will be returned to them.
Yep.
So buying a strategic and high value, generic dictionary domain name it adds value to your company, not just from, the observation standpoint, but on the books. You are putting a strong asset on your books. And in most cases, with most startups, unless they have some piece of, valuable proprietary software or other piece of proprietary intellectual property, in most cases, that domain name is the most valuable asset on their balance sheet. And, that is important for investors. And like you said, if it all goes to hell in a handbasket, you sell that domain name, you're going to probably get back what you paid for it or close to it. Even if you take a small loss, your investors aren't walking away with a goose egg. They're going to get some of their money back.
What do you have joyride.com as an asking price?
I believe I don't have it in front of me, but I believe the asking price is like 60 grand.
And you think it's fair because you've clearly coached the seller?
Yeah, in this particular case, the seller told me what he wanted to sell it for, and I thought that it was an acceptable price. I didn't actually coach him on the price, but I do. I think that's a fair ride. I think that's a really powerful brand for the automotive space, particularly the luxury automotive space, which is an extremely profitable space. Automobiles online is one of the largest verticals that exists. And whether you're selling insurance or, maybe it's just a forum for auto enthusiasts, maybe it's, used car retail, whatever it might be. There's a million different ways to use joyride.com. So I think that's a really, really powerful brand, and I think it's worth the money.
Good. And I want to come back and ask you about a few more prices because I want to figure out how you think about the prices and how other startups who are looking at things and saying, that's crazy because I typed in that domain name and nothing even resolved. Like, how could it be worth that much, right? It's like the lot of land next to my building in Seattle. It's got nothing on it, so clearly it should have zero value. But let me come back to that.
Clearly.
Because what you said just before this was that names are drying up, like the good names. Every single word, dictionaryword.com is taken already. All the triple letters, all the double letters, all the quad letters. But for those in the know, following ICANN and what's going on, there's going to be thousands of new top-level domains being launched in the next few years. .shop, .app, .buy, you name it, it's going to be right of the dot. So instead of .com, if you're launching an alert app and you don't want to pay 6-7 figures for alert.com, you can buy alert.app. Yeah.
That's true, and I think that what Icon has told us that the reason for releasing 1,000 plus new TLDs is because the alternatives for new companies, new individuals that want a web presence are drying up, and all the good names are taken, and they want to have alternatives for those individuals. And I think that for a new company starting up, depending, I think it falls in line with what we said before. It depends on how big you want to be. It depends on how you intend to drive traffic to your website. And if you want to be, I think for apps, it might be a great alternative. People are finding you in the App Store. So, if you want to have your web presence at, findme.app, then I think that's great.
Yeah.
And, you need to accept that you will lose traffic to the person who owns the .com. That's just a fact. We saw that with O.co. Overstock bought O.co. They did a complete rebrand to O.co. And several months later, the CEO came out very candidly and said, you know what, we made a mistake. We love O.co. It's a great brand. The world's just not ready for it yet.
Right.
And, they saw a significant bleeding of their traffic from O.co to O.com. People were trying to go to O.com, which, of course, doesn't exist. And they lost a lot of web traffic. So, I think that some of these extensions are going to be great alternatives for some companies. I think that they're going to be great auxiliary extensions or auxiliary domain names for some companies. I think that they might be great for using in a specific marketing campaign, a specific television spot, whatever it might be. There's going to be a lot of great uses for these domain names. Whether or not it's a great idea to use them for your corporate branding is yet to be seen. I can see a lot of great applications for sort of some of the branded TLDs, the sort of in-house TLDs, the ones that are not going to be sold off to consumers. I particularly like the idea of having the sort of dotless email, right? So if you have at BMW, or let's say you get .bmw, right? Then you could have Mike at BMW. Not Mike at BMW.com, just Mike at BMW. Right. I think that's great. I think dotless email for these sort of in-house branded TLDs, I think that's super cool.
Yeah.
I love that concept. I think that email has more or less been the same for 20 years, and I think that this could lead to some pretty cool innovation. But again, coming back to the corporate branding, yet to be seen. I think
so. It could be a good alternative, and if you're starting up an app, you have a great idea for an alert app, and you're trying to find, any single word is already taken, and any two-word combination.com is already taken, likely. Yeah. And then if you want to go to .me or .io or .co, those are likely taken as well. So. Yeah. These new TLDs that are coming out, from what I hear from you, are just going to be another secondary opportunity for startups to get something at registration cost, $10, $20, whatever it is, rather than having to pay tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands for a phenomenal .com. But at the end of the day, it's those .coms that are going to get them, be able to get the leakage of traffic from general population that doesn't understand the alternate extensions yet.
Yeah, all domains have a place. I mean, and like I said, if you're a startup, you don't have the budget to buy that killer.com, these might be a great alternative for you.
Yeah.
And but ultimately, when you do blow up, and hopefully, you do, you're probably going to have to go shopping for that .com.
Yeah.
That matches your URL.
So which TLDs do you like right now, Andrew, as alternate extensions to .com, and which ones don't you like?
I like a bunch of them when they make sense. Like .me, I love .me. We own a bunch of .me. Media Options owns a bunch of .me domain names in our portfolio. But I like verbs. I like verbs and some adjectives. And the ones that make sense, love me. I think Michael Berkins and his group, I think they've got the best ones I've seen. Verbs are great on .me. It's a call to action, and that's fantastic. That's what you want in branding. That's what you want, if you're doing a pay-per-click campaign. You want a call to action. You want a domain name that tells people what you're doing and it is an exact match of what they're looking to do. So I think that works great. I like .tv a lot. .tv's been around a long time. I don't know the registration numbers offhand, but I would say .tv's been very successful. In Latin America particularly, I've seen a very widespread adoption of .tv for a lot of media companies. And I like .tv, but again, I like it for things that make sense. Sports.tv, soccer.tv, fishing.tv, cooking.tv, travel.tv, things that people want to watch on TV. That makes sense for the .tv extension. Some type of online media that is people are watching on television. Makes a good fit for .tv.
Yeah. Which TLDs don't you like? Which ones should entrepreneurs and startups stay away from?
Man, I mean, as a domain broker and representing a lot of clients, I'm hesitant to sort of, put the X on any particular extension because I've got, friends that work at a lot of these registries. But, overall, I'm not a big fan of .biz. I'm not a big fan of .info. I'm definitely not a fan of .mobi.
What about CC?
Not so much. .cc has been very successful in the Chinese market. I think, from what I understand, they've sort of adopted it as, sort of the .china instead of .cn, and so I see a lot of sales happening. You don't see a lot in DN Journal, but I'm aware of quite a number of sales that happen on short numeric and short 2-letter, 3-letter .cc domain names, and some pinyin keywords on .cc.
Yeah. Did you say .co? Did you like .co?
Yeah, I do like .co. I mean, again, I'm always concerned about the confusion with .com, but I do like .co, and there's certainly been a wide adoption of .co among the startup community. I think more than any other TLD, maybe even more than .com, more than anybody. I mean, they have done the best marketing effort I've ever seen of any TLD that has ever. I mean, .co has just done a really bang up job. Everybody that works there is great. They've all done a great job. So
yeah.
I am a fan of .co. But I would advise clients, to, if possible, if they have the budget for it, some people would even prefer .co over .com given both options. But I do always advise clients that, I think if you have the budget for it, if you can, I would still advise having the .com just to protect your brand and to protect yourself from, losing the traffic to the .com. But I do like .co. I mean, I always say if we went back in time, I've been pretty vocal. I'm a big fan of short domain names. So anything that makes my domain shorter, is good for me. I like that. I like short. I think, the web is all about short. I think it's this year they say access to the internet through mobile devices is going to surpass that of, laptops and computers. And when I'm on a mobile device, I don't want to type a 12-digit, domain. I want the shortest possible way to get on your website. And I think that's why, apps have become so popular, because you click on an app and you're on the website, essentially.
Yeah.
I love 2 letters. I love 3 letters. And .co is 2 letters instead of 3 letters. And, that makes it shorter. It's one less click, one less button to type. So I like that.
Let me ask you this, Drew. Is there any chance that domain names will go away in the future when everyone just uses a Google appliance and types in their search?
It's a question that used to keep me up at night, and I don't think so. My definitive answer is no. I don't see. Eventually, probably there will be some mega technology disruption that changes the way we use the internet and may or may not make domain names obsolete. However, that is a long, long, long way off. And ultimately, what we need to remember is, despite all of the various ways that we all use domain names, what they are is an addressing system. And just the way that we use phone numbers, and phone numbers have been around an awful long time. And even though we don't remember each other's phone numbers anymore, they are not obsolete. We all still have a phone number. You need a phone number in order for people to reach you. And so I think domain names are very similar. It used to be that I remember my wife's phone number in order to reach her. Now I just go into my phone and I find Anna and I dial it, and that's it. And I don't even know what number it calls, but I end up with Anna.
Right.
Ultimately, the browsers are trying to do away with search bars, and there's a lot of different ways that people are trying to negate the importance of domain names. But at the end of the day, every business card that gets handed out, every offline media advertisement has to give people a way to find them. And it might be a hashtag, it might be a Facebook thing, but at the end of the day, it comes down to a domain name. Your web presence is on a domain name. We're already seeing, there was a big trend of people handing over their online identity to Facebook and to Twitter. And ultimately, companies, that was a big mistake. Companies cannot afford to hand over their identity to a third party. They need control of their online identity, and that requires a domain name. Everybody that wants a presence online needs a domain name. A good domain or a bad domain, they need a domain. It's you can have a good phone number and a bad phone number, but you need a phone number. Otherwise, nobody can reach you.
Right.
So I think domain names are very much, I think it's a good analogy with phone numbers, in terms of, whether or not they'll become obsolete. It's an addressing system, and that's the bottom line, and that's not going to change anytime soon.
All right. Every good domain name is reserved already. I did it when I was looking to start up Domain Sherpa with these video interviews where I bring on experts such as yourself, the Sherpas, and help people understand a concept. And when I went to try and find a great domain name, a brand that had the word domain or domain name in it, everything's been reserved, including Domain Sherpa at the time. What do you recommend as the process for a startup or a bootstrap company at a high level? How should they go about thinking about finding a great brand and then trying to acquire it?
So, this is something that we do often. That's represents almost 60% of our business now. Is acquiring domain names for startups. So we go through this process all the time. And, essentially we try to get a good idea of what is the product or service that company is going to offer, and think about, 10, 20 keywords that are, relevant to that product or service. And then, look at which of those 10, 20 keywords are available as domain names. And if we don't find any great options, then we start looking at synonyms. And, and then just you go down the line. You just keep drilling down. Just keep drilling down.
When you say, so I understand it, understand the service, understand the keywords associated with that from probably a customer's perspective, which are available. Are you only looking at .com, and are you only typing them in to see if there's actually a website there?
Yeah, so 99% of the companies that contact us, they want a .com.
Yeah.
And the companies generally that end up going with a .co or a .me or a .tv, unless it is a really high value one, like a Love Me or a Date Me or a Find Me, unless it's a really high value one, they probably just reach out themselves and purchase it or register a new one. That's not that's available, not taken. So the companies that contact us, 99% are looking for a .com, and first we got to look at the budget, and if they've got a significant budget, a high 5-figure, a 6-figure budget, then obviously we're going to be looking for a premium one-word .com, something that's a real lights out, top tier brand. If they've got a, let's say, my rule of thumb is kind of, and I know, I'm sorry, we've kind of gotten off topic, but
that's good.
But my rule of thumb is generally a serious startup, a serious business looking for a new domain name. Generally, will spend between $15,000 to $25,000, even at the lower end, to buy a good domain for their brand. Okay, so I take that into account also when I'm selling my names. If somebody contacts Media Options about one of the domains in our portfolio, I always kind of say that to them. If you're serious about buying a good domain for your business, then I think that a $15,000 to $25,000 budget is a reasonable budget. For sort of a second tier name, maybe a not as common one-word .com or a two-word .com. And then there's a lot in between. But I think that at a minimum, we're looking for companies that have got a budget of $25,000.
Okay. And so, if companies just going through this process, so I can understand what your process is. So if people want to, contact you or any other domain name broker, then they sort of understand where to do it. But if people want to, just like when people have their houses, if they want to sell it themselves, go for it. You put up the sign, you deal with all the sort of stuff. They remove the hassle by bringing on a real estate broker, just like they remove the hassle and they can become anonymous so people don't know that they just got their Series A round when they bring on a broker such as yourself.
Yep.
But if they want to go through it themselves, they would do the same thing as you. They would determine the words. They would determine which ones are available. Now, when you look at it, is it as simple as saying it didn't resolve, it's not owned by a major corporation, or maybe it doesn't matter. Even if there is a website, but it doesn't look like it's making a lot of revenue, those are all potential purchases.
Yeah, I mean, it runs the gamut. I mean, we've acquired domain names from major corporations. I mean, we acquired reputationmanagement.com from Dow Jones.
Oh, wow.
And most people would look at that and say, "Oh, it's owned by Dow Jones. Forget it. No chance."
Yeah.
But you'd be surprised. These companies, most of them acquire these types of domain names through the acquisition of another company, and maybe that company acquired it through the acquisition of another smaller company. And at the end of the day, some of these companies don't even know the domains that they own. And so if they're not being put to use, obviously you're going to need to offer something that makes it worth their time to go through the internal process of selling and transferring that domain.
Right.
But many of them are open to selling those domain names, and and that is where having a domain broker really helps.
Yeah.
We know what it takes. We know how to talk to them, how to get in touch with them, and how to help them through that process of yes, you can part with this domain name. Look, it's never been in use. Making sure that all the processes happen that need to happen in order for them to feel good about letting it go.
Yeah.
In many cases, companies come to us and they've already they already know the name they want to pick, or they've got a hit list of 10 names. So we don't always participate in the naming process. Although it is something that I actually enjoy. It's one of my favorite parts of the job. Actually, is I love the
that
actual
creativity. Yeah.
Yeah, I love the creativity side of it. I enjoy the actual naming process. So,
have you ever talked to a website owner who had a functional business up and running on the website out of the domain name and into a sale?
Yesterday, more often than that. We've actually done it quite a bit. There's a lot of people that run businesses that they started 20, 30 years ago. They got lucky, they bought the name, and but it might be, so
yeah. What was that? Not naming the name that you just did yesterday because it probably hasn't closed. What was the dollar amount of that domain name purchase?
It's about 120 grand.
Okay.
120 grand, and it was a local accountant. He had a great domain name. He's been using it he's the original registrant. Or no, actually he wasn't. He purchased it for like $1,000.
Wow.
But way back in the earlier mid-90s. And, he way underutilized. The guy probably had, 20 clients in his local town. He had this lights out domain name, probably never got a single client because of the domain name. Right. He got it because of a Yellow Page ad, in his local phone book or whatever it might be. But, he was the guy, he had a great domain name, and it was being underutilized. And at the end of the day, it certainly wasn't worth 120 grand to him. Yeah. And so he was better off taking the cash.
Yeah. How important is it that when a company, a startup, buys a killer domain name for $15,000 or $115,000, that they get the matching social media handles, the Facebook vanity URL, the Twitter handle?
More and more that's becoming important, and more we're having companies, actually requiring that to be in the contract. That if we buy birdie.com, that they want it to be in the contract that either if the domain owner owns the Twitter handle or the Facebook handle, that is transferred with the domain name, or that the domain owner puts it in writing that they do not own those, and if they do, that it must be transferred with the domain name. So more and more I'm seeing that, and I think it is important. I mean, we're doing more and more social media here at Media Options, to promote media options, and I'm impressed. I'm impressed at how much traffic you can drive through social media and how much cheaper it is to drive that traffic through social media as opposed to search engine optimization and the efficiency of the social media versus financial efficiency of social media versus spending that same amount on search engine optimization.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I know it was an important factor when I launched Domain Sherpa that I could get the Facebook and the Twitter handle. Yeah. But every single Twitter handle is reserved because it doesn't cost any money to get a Twitter handle. So if you're into SEO, good luck getting SEO anything without like 5 underscores in the handle, right? Or if you're into automotive or anything, it's going to be tough. Even if you own a domain name like joyride.com, let's say, Joyride is already taken, Joyride.com is probably already taken, you name it. And most likely they're not in use. What do you do in that case?
I mean, that is outside of my expertise.
Yeah.
I have participated in the acquisition of a few Twitter handles and one Facebook account, but
that's not allowed, quote unquote, is it? Like, I think the terms and conditions of Twitter say you can't.
We didn't pay for it. We just negotiated the friendly transfer.
Right. Okay. That's gotcha. So you negotiate some sort of intellectual property transfer,
we just showed
and then
them
along comes
for it than they did, and they thought, oh well, I'm not using it. We'll transfer it.
Oh, okay, I got
it. It was all in good faith.
Right. Okay, so the terms and conditions are all up and up.
Oh,
all right.
Yeah.
So I want to ask you about how much should a company set aside to buy a killer domain name. You had said earlier that to buy a good brand, $15,000 to $25,000. So
at a bare minimum.
Am I to understand that if I came to you wanting to buy a domain name, Drew, you're probably not going to spend your time contacting companies to acquire the name unless it was a domain name at least in that price range? If I came to you with $1,000, it's probably not going to be worth your time.
Yeah, I mean, $1,000, we probably can't help you. But we do often work with companies that, are just, it might not be their company name. It's just a domain they want to acquire, and they've got a $5,000 budget. I mean, we have a $500 minimum as we have a $500 minimum fee. And so our acquisition fee is, generally speaking, 10% of the purchase price with a $15,000 maximum and $500 minimum. So if it's less than $5,000, you're still going to pay $500.
Yep.
And so it may become not worth it to you. But in some cases, it is. In some cases, it's still worthwhile. Now, I said I said it's 10%, but to be honest, in most cases, there's some type of incentive factor. So it may be that company comes to us and says, we want to buy joyride.com, and assuming that we weren't brokering it. And we say, okay, well, we think, I think it's probably a name that you can acquire between 50 and 100 grand. And they say, well, we've got a $75,000 budget. And then we might say, okay, well, let's say that our fee is going to be $5,000, which would be 10% of the bottom end of that range, the expected price range. Mm-hmm. And for every dollar under $75,000 that we get the domain for you, we get 10%. Mm-hmm. So that way we're incentivized to get it at the cheapest possible price. Mm-hmm. And it's still worth our time. And, our interest is aligned with our client's interest. Yeah. So to be honest, it's very difficult. And I've had this conversation with other domain brokers and other acquisition specialists. And it's very difficult to establish sort of just a broad line acquisition fee. Because if you just say, well, 10%, then, most clients, if it's not somebody that you've worked with and trusts you, come to you and they say, well, then, you're incentivized to buy this domain at the highest possible price.
Right.
And that's true. Now, what makes me good at my job is I'm highly motivated to I love making the deal, right? I love negotiating and I think I'm good at it. And, that's what makes me good at my job. So I'm always trying to get the best deal for our clients, regardless of the incentive. But
so just to run through those numbers, if I was going to buy a domain name I had $75,000. I thought 50,000 was fair. You thought it could go anywhere from 50 to 100. So you're taking a risk because if you think it could be at 100, the domain owner could think that as well. And so a deal cannot be done. You've wasted your time. You don't get compensated for a not a completed deal, right?
No.
So if the deal gets done at 50,000, you get 10% or $5,000. But if it gets done at 75,000, you get.
We still only get 5,000.
You still only get 5,000. What if it gets done at? Well, I'm sorry. So if it gets done at 50,000, then you get 10% of the 25,000 difference that you.
Exactly. So
saved.
We'd have basically a $5,000 base rate,
yep.
right? Which is 10% of the 50,000. I expect that name is worth 50 to 100.
Yep.
So we take 10% of that base rate, which is 50, and we say, okay, that's the fee. And then we have a bonus based on performance, basically.
Right.
So the cheaper we buy that domain name, the more we earn.
Okay.
So if I get that domain under 75,000, we get 10% of that difference. You tell me you have a $75,000 budget. That means you're willing to spend 75. And if I save you money, you give me 10% of that. And and then if we end up getting it for more than 75 and you adjust your budget upwards, then we only end up with 5,000.
Yep. So just to be clear, because I like this incentivized compensation, because then it gets the buyer and the broker on the same page. If you get it for 50,000, the 5,000 base plus 10% of just the difference that you save them, the 75 minus the 50. So that would be another $2,500. So you walk away with $7,500 commission.
Yep.
Okay. Understand.
Which is what would have ended up if we had gotten it for 75,000.
Right.
But
exactly.
Now we've saved you a lot of money.
Right. Okay. So there's the, in that process that we just described is the biggest issue that startups, that investors in startups, that new business owners have. How do you, as an expert, know that the value of a domain name is between $50,000 and $100,000? And why is that not an enormously large range?
So, our perception of money gets skewed in this business. It's very strange. I mean, I'm not even going to go there right now. That's for another day. But so basically, you and I have had, I think, our most popular interview. I think one of the most popular interviews on Domain Sherpa was, establishing a value of domain names.
Right.
And that works for exact match keyword domain names. And when we get into the realm of one-word, non-specific domain names, like obviously back to baby strollers, like if you're stroller.com, we can measure the value of that domain name because it's a product being sold. We know, what businesses are willing to pay for that product, in terms of advertising, pay-per-click.
Right.
And we know how many people search for that product every month. Okay. So we can establish a value range. Mm-hmm. When we get into brandable domain names, it's a whole different ballgame. And then it really just comes down to scarcity, quality. It just comes down to quality, scarcity, the length, how easily can it be replaced?
Yeah.
Which is, goes hand in hand with scarcity and experience,
Yeah. Okay. So if people want to buy creditcards.com, for example, they can type in the Rosener equation into Google. They can find your interview. They can see exactly what your methodology is for valuing a keyword-rich domain name on Google, where companies are buying and paying cost per click for that keyword phrase. And so that's cut and dry. That gives you an order of magnitude value from which to then start to negotiate. Yes. But when it comes to a brandable, like the color white, or like a generic word like fire, or a word like love, you can't use the same equation because it's a brandable.
No.
It just
exactly. And it's not about search.
How do you know that Joyride is worth $60,000?
Well, so it might be worth $250,000 to the right party, right? Ultimately, there's even more factors that go into this than an exact match keyword domain. Yeah. But ultimately, are we looking to buy one or are we looking to sell one?
Yeah.
If you're looking to sell a single word keyword, brandable domain, you're never going to achieve the same price as when that startup or that domain broker comes knocking on your door saying, hey, I've got a client, or hey, I want to buy your domain name. When it's the buyer's idea to buy that domain name, you will always achieve a higher price. And that's a very important concept to remember. And it's something that a lot of domain investors don't take into account. You know, some people come to market with their domain and they say, oh, no, I know my domain is worth $1 million. And I say, well, it could be if that buyer came knocking on your door and they need that domain.
Right.
But if you want me to bring your domain to market and you want me to tell somebody that they should buy your domain, it's not worth $1 million to them. You know, it's worth what they're willing to pay for it. And, you know, and then you start getting into those factors that I mentioned before. You know, how easily can it be replaced? Is there alternative spellings? Is it short? Is it easily pronounced? Is it easy to spell? You know, traditionally, you know, colors, short animal names. You know, we just sold Pelicans.com to the NBA team through Mark Monitor.
What was the sale price of that one?
Unfortunately I can't disclose the sale price.
All right, let's go through some examples then.
Okay.
Because you don't know what the value is. I'm just looking at you as an expert in the realm. Clearly there is some gut feel to this. Curious.com. If you didn't know what that sold for, and I don't know, how would you, what's your gut feel on the range for how much Curious.com would sell for?
Man, so like you said, a lot of it is gut feel, and the gut feel comes from experience. Yep. You know, I've transacted tens of millions of dollars of these things, and at some point you just have a good feeling for what they're going to go for. Yeah. And you know, Curious.com. Somebody comes to me and says, "Hey, I've got Curious.com. I want to sell this for 250 grand a day." You know, if they came to me and they said, "I've got Curious.com. I want to sell it for 50," I'd say, "I think I can do that." So I think that, you know, Curious.com, I would say, probably has a bottom line. You know, probably in the domain investor community, it would have a liquid value of 35 to 50 grand. And I would say that, you know, to a startup looking to buy that name, it's probably worth 100, 125, maybe 150 on, you know, if all the stars aligned.
Yeah. So, you know, it's interesting. One of the sponsors of Domain Sherpa, as you can see in the upper right-hand corner, is Estabot.com. It's an algorithm that values it based on a lot of factors, like the Rosener equation does for cost per click and search volume and things like that. But sometimes it's just amazing what it does for brandables. And the way, one of the factors it uses for brandables is past sales that you and I don't necessarily know about for that exact domain, but it also looks at related words. So if it's curiously.com sold for $50,000, then clearly Curious.com is going to have a higher value than that.
Yes.
And I don't know the factors that went into this, but I just typed in Curious.com onto Estabot.com, and the Estabot value is $127,000. Bam! You just nailed it. Like, and I did not tell you, you know, what that value was. I didn't even think of going there. So you said 100 and 150,000 retail to a startup, somebody that wants that domain name.
That's what I would expect.
So I'm going to reach out to the CEO of Curious.com and ask him what he bought that domain name for. So Data Hero, you thought was in the
1,000 to 5,000
1,000 to 5,000 range. Retrace.com, not as good as Curious, in your opinion?
Retrace.com, I mean, okay, so let's say if somebody came to me for that, to put that in my newsletter, so meaning we're targeting, you know, sort of the domain investor community, this marketing and advertising agency community, developer community, I would expect, you know, liquid value, meaning, you know, I know it sells, probably 18 to 25, probably. 18 to 25,000.
Okay.
To a startup, probably 50, 35 to 50, maybe 60.
I'm typing my password into Safari because if I start up Chrome, I've got a million tabs open. It would kill our connection here. So let's see here. Now I got to retype my password because I want to figure out what the what Estabot thinks the value is live here. Why? And $8. All right, we're in. Not now. I hope I typed my password correctly. It's one of those, I've got this password keeper on my Mac, which has the app that it connects back into, and so it's beautiful. But when I start up Safari, I don't have the plugin installed. So what did you say the value of retrace.com was?
I said in the investor community, I thought it's probably like 18 to 25. And I think, to a startup, maybe 40, 50, 60.
Yeah. Okay. So what Esteban tells me is that their valuation is $10,000. That's the retail value to a startup. But it also shares what the for sale price is if a sale price is listed on a marketplace, and it's listed at $50,000, I believe. So, to your point, Esteban is not a and I've done a couple of walkthroughs of Esteban. It's not the end all be all. It is an order of magnitude. Just like the Rosener equation is an order of magnitude, and everything is up for negotiation.
They've also been pretty candid with people saying, we are not great at valuing brandable domain names.
Right, because who is?
We're giving you a good idea of what an exact match keyword domain is worth. Yep. And I'm saying exactly the same thing.
Yep.
I can give you a pretty accurate idea of what an exact match keyword domain name is worth.
Yep.
But it really, when it comes to brandables, man, the sky's the limit. You never know. I mean, we had a company that wanted cacao.com, and it's owned by a very not a very well-known domainer, but one of the largest domain owners. He has one of the most valuable domain portfolios in the world, I think. An Italian gentleman, and we were hired to acquire cacao.com. We offered him $75,000. He said no. We offered him $100,000. He said no. I told these guys, I said, listen, I mean, cacao.com, I could see maybe it's worth 150, maybe 200 if you're lucky, but beyond that, you're really just paying a massive premium.
Is this the domain name COW.com? Is that what you're saying?
No, cacao, like chocolate.
Oh, okay, I gotcha. Yeah. CACAO.
Yeah.
.com.
And which again, there's also, which makes it even less valuable, is that there's two spellings. There's also cacao. There's cacao, which is CACAO, and then there's COCOA.
Oh, right.
Cocoa, but also pronounced cacao.
Those are terrible domain names. Why are you?
I know. And it's funny because if you walk down the chocolate aisle, even like Lindt spells it both ways. Lindt chocolate spells it both ways. On one candy bar it says cacao, CACAO, and on the next chocolate bar it says COCOA.
Yeah.
So I have no idea, which one is more commonly accepted.
Yeah.
So anyways, but these are some of the factors that I took into account. I said, guys, this thing is it's not worth more money. Let's pick another name.
Yeah.
And they just said, no, we want cacao.com. We went all the way up to $500,000 for cacao.com, and ultimately the guy still wouldn't sell it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, doesn't that kill your reputation as a broker when you start off at $75K and then go $100K and then go $150K? Like, if you've gone up 3 times, there's clearly a lot more money here.
Well, I mean, I guess that's what he was interpreting it, right? I mean, but unfortunately, my negotiation ability is limited to the price range that my client gives me.
Right.
So, which is a good point. I mean, I always tell clients, be honest with me up front, because it affects my negotiation. Mm-hmm. It affects the tactics that I use in negotiating. It affects how, everything about the negotiation. So I need to know what your range is. Mm-hmm. It doesn't mean that I'm going to go immediately to the highest price that you're willing to pay. But I need to know because it'll affect the course of my negotiation. Mm-hmm. Like you said, yes, that probably affected the price. And, it's unfortunate we never ended up buying the name.
Yeah.
And it may or may not be because I didn't know up front what their budget was. We were talking about somewhere up to $100,000, and, suddenly they had $500,000 to spend. So, if I had known that up front, right. We wouldn't have, the course of negotiation would have been different.
Yeah.
So that is important to share that with the broker up front.
All right, so let's talk about that, Drew, and this is going to be my last question. There's a ton of domain name brokers in the marketplace. You know, if you go to Domain Sherpa and you pull down the buy or the sell menus, I have a list of domain name brokers there that are sort of the larger names in the industry. But I swear I could go to, you know, any host of the number of people that tweet me on Twitter and say, hey, Domain Sherpa, look at my domains. And then I go to their website and they've got, you know, brokerage services, and I've never heard of them before. And so with so many people, you know, it doesn't take a certification or degree or anything to hang up a shingle for a domain name broker and say, I'm fully capable of doing it. What questions would you recommend that buyers of domain names ask when they're doing their due diligence in selecting a domain name broker to represent them?
So I think that's really, I think it's really unfortunate that there isn't some type of certification to be a domain broker like there is with real estate,
right?
Because it's equally as important, and there is ethics that domain brokers need to follow, and it's unfortunate that many of the people that hang that shingle, you know, on their wall and say I'm a domain broker, they don't have those same ethics, and I think that most of the people that you've got listed on your website, you know, are ethical and good domain brokers. But there are a lot of people out there pretending to be a domain broker, you know, that don't follow a code of ethics. And I think, you know, it's important that somebody does, whether you're looking to buy or sell a domain name, that you do ask a lot of the right questions. And I think, you know, it's important to ask for references.
Okay.
See who else that person has worked with. Contact those references. See what their experience was. So you know,
I want to get a list of, say, the last 5 transactions that you've done, the domain name and the person's name and maybe their phone number. Of course, you'd need to clear it with those people to make sure that you could provide that list.
Yeah, in a lot of cases, you know, like I know in my case, it's difficult often to provide the actual domain name that you know, last 5 domains that we've sold, because the majority of transactions that we conduct are under some type of NDA or just a commonly agreed upon non-disclosure,
sure,
even if it's not signed. And we have an internal policy of not sharing any of our clients' information without express written permission from them. But we are happy to provide references of people that we've worked with, and that doesn't, you know, breach any type of confidentiality agreement.
Okay.
And
so at a minimum, get a list of references and actually call them. Just like if you're painting your house for $2,000, you can get a list of references, and you should call them to make sure that, you know, the people that they did services for would recommend them again, would hire them again.
Absolutely. So I think a list of references is important. You know, Google their company name, see where they're mentioned, see if there's you know, negative mentions, see if there's, you know, a lot of positive attention.
Yep.
You know, check some of the domain sales references like DN Journal. You know, unfortunately, we stopped disclosing all of our domain sales.
All of them.
Yeah, we don't disclose any of our sales anymore.
So for those not familiar with dnjournal.com, Ron Jackson every week does a roundup of all of the public sales that are disclosed. So from marketplaces like Afternic and GoDaddy, he'll pull those in, but he'll also any domain name brokers that have public sales that want to disclose them. And last week, I think there were 5 6-figure domain names that made the top 20 list, and you can look at them by country codes. You can look at them by major TLDs. It's a great resource for sort of getting your bearing around how much domains are worth.
Yeah, I wish we could disclose our.
No, why did you change your policy?
We would have knocked that list out of the park.
Why did you change your policy at Media Options?
Okay, so generally, to be quite honest, the majority of our clients don't want their domain purchases or their domain sales disclosed for various reasons. Primarily the purchases. When a company's acquiring a new domain name, they don't want it disclosed because they don't want their competitors knowing what they're doing, or they don't want the media knowing what they're doing before they're able to actually launch a business, right? Yeah. And on the sales side, you know, to some degree, the same thing. They don't want their competitors knowing that maybe they're moving out of a vertical, or you know, that maybe they launched a business and it didn't work out. Maybe you know, maybe it's for tax purposes. I don't know, but there's a lot of reasons why people don't want their sales or their purchases disclosed. And then, so we had a couple of instances where we did disclose the sale of a domain name, and we had to retract that because a client came to us afterwards. Even though they hadn't told us in advance, they didn't want to disclose.
Yeah.
They came to us afterwards. We had to retract it. It doesn't look good for us. It doesn't look good for Ron Jackson. And ultimately, I just made a decision that it's not my place to share my client's information. Whether we sold a domain for them or bought a domain for them, it's not my place to disclose. If they want to disclose, I'm happy to get the attention. I'm happy to get the mention that we help them to acquire or to help them to sell. But it's not my place to say, hey, we sold this domain, or hey, we bought this domain for the client. It's just I don't feel that it's fair.
Right.
So.
And the closest thing the domain name industry has to an MLS system for real estate is Ron Jackson's dnjournal.com weekly roundup.
Excellent. There's some other great resources like Adam Strong runs
namebio.com.
Namebio.com. And there's a few others out there. But yeah, I mean, on a weekly basis,
I hear
Ron runs a great editorial.
All right, so back to the due diligence. Ask them for references. Call the references. Ask those references if they'd work with them again, if they'd recommend them, and tell them it's off the record. Do a search. Find out if there's any bad reviews, any good reviews. Look at recent sales if the broker is disclosing the sales publicly, which you are not. Any other things that buyers or sellers should think about when hiring a domain name broker?
I think, ask them, if they have a specific niche, ask them if they've bought or sold domain names in the vertical that you're looking to sell one in.
Why is that important?
Well, like in any sales business, your ability to sell a domain name has a lot to do with your Rolodex. There's a lot of other factors involved. I mean, persistence. There's a lot of personality traits that and attributes that go into making a good salesperson or domain broker. But ultimately, it comes down to contacts. A lot of it comes down to contacts, and we've built a great reputation and a great contact list in the lead generation industry. So really, I would say, our strong suits have been in the startup space, helping startups acquire domain names, and in the lead gen industry. So really focused on exact match keyword domain names in the most competitive verticals online: insurance, mortgage, credit, home repair, automotive, health. The classic lead gen stuff, the classic, lead gen and affiliate marketing spaces. That's where we've really built a strong business. And so, ask your domain broker, if you're looking to sell a domain related to tennis shoes, ask them if they've got, first at a high level, have you sold many e-commerce domain names? And if yes, then, have you sold anything in the apparel industry or in the footwear industry, or do you have contacts in that space? And if they do, it's going to make their job a lot easier, which will affect a faster sale for you.
How do you know they're not bullshitting you? Oh, yeah, I've sold like 10 e-commerce sites in the past 2 months, but I can't tell you the names of them because they're under NDA.
Yeah, I mean, again, you can ask for references, and at some point, it's going to be there's got to be a personal connection. I mean, if they're a good salesman, they can probably talk to talk. It's going to come down to do you have a good feeling talking to that person on the phone? And I encourage you too. Don't just exchange emails. Get on the phone with somebody. See if you can build a rapport with them. See, you're going to get a feel for what type of person they are, and whether your personalities conflict or whether you're a good fit. Just like in the real estate world, most, you generally don't hire a real estate broker until you've met them face to face. In the online industry, that's a lot more difficult.
And I would say get on Skype. Like, I can look you in the eyes right now and see how you interact. Yeah. Exactly.
There's in this day and age, there's no excuse for not picking up the phone or getting on Skype and, having a candid conversation about your goals, the domain name you've got, the feeling, what does the domain broker think about it, and seeing if it, if you think it's a good fit.
Yep. All right. I'm going to be promoting this to the startup communities. Drew, if people have questions that I didn't bring up during the interview, they can post them under the video, and we'll ask you to come back and answer as many as you can.
Absolutely.
Drew, if somebody wants to contact you, ask you some questions in private, just send you a thank you note and say, thanks for coming on the show and sharing. I learned a lot, and now I know what I need to do in my business. What's the best way for them to connect with you?
You can visit us at mediaoptions.com. We have implemented a live chat feature. And yes, that is me. If you see Andrew in the chat, it's me. It's not some robot or somebody in India.
And if I see Tess, is that a robot?
And if you see Tess, that's also a live Tess Diaz sitting in Phoenix, Arizona. So yes, we have a live chat on Media Options. You can email me, Andrew at mediaoptions.com. You can hit me up on Skype. Media Options Inc., all lowercase, all one word, I believe, is our Skype name. We try to be very available and very responsive. We try to, respond to every email inquiry that we get, unless it's just absolutely absurd.
Yeah.
We welcome people reaching out.
Andrew Rosener, CEO of Media Options, thanks for coming back on the show, and thanks for being a Domain Sherpa.
Thank you very much for having me, Michael. It was great.
Thank you all for watching. We'll see you next time.